Let's turn all this, with the star being the Seminole pumpkin, into that. So first, that looks pretty evil, doesn't it? First, I'm going to cut that pumpkin. I make two halves and I will bake it because the flavor is so much better than when it's cooked. This beautiful color. Every time I cut one, I'm amazed at how vibrant this is. Okay, the guts are out. This goes really easy with just a spoon, and then that goes in the oven at 400, but I'll roast them cut side down because I want to have the juices run out. I don't want to be stuck with a really wet flesh, and then that juice we'll use for something else. But when you roast them this side down, the cut side down, then it all drips to the bottom. Hey, I know you're thinking that my baking sheet isn't clean. I mean, it's cleaned, it's been washed and scrubbed, but this stuff does not come off. It has a lot of miles on it and it works good. Again, and I've elevated it on the rack so that it doesn't sit in its own juices. Seeds are out and cleaned off. They did quite nice. I will be roasting them up, so that's a snack for whatever movie tonight. And then this stuff, which has a kind of a hard core, that's where the seeds are attached to. I'm sure it's edible. I mean, why wouldn't it? But it's kind of tougher. I'll cook that up and that goes to our dog. She too likes to eat good. 30 minutes, pumpkins out of the oven. See all that liquid right there? I don't have that in the flesh now. It's already out, so it'll be a lot denser, a lot more flavorful, and this goes in quite easily. So let this cool and then take it out and onward from there. All peeled and it's cooled down. I ran it through the food mill. That's 15 minutes of my life I won't get back. Don't do what I do, just put it in a blender. But it came out nice. Now it's time to deal with noodles. Noodles are cooking. This is the fresh stuff, but you don't have to use fresh because a lot of times it's I don't know, it's just not easy to store them if you don't have the room, even though they store so long. So you can can it in chunks, don't can the puree. But if you can it in chunks, strain it well, you get the same thing and you can make the same recipe. So what I'm doing here deviates a little bit from the recipe I will post below. Um, Obviously Alfredo doesn't have meat in it, but I had this organic ground beef left and it's not that much, so I will incorporate that. I'm also going to incorporate some mushrooms, but you do not need this in there. You can make your sauce with just the pumpkin as it will be in the recipe. I added the olive oil, butter and flour as olive oil and butter as stated in the recipe, and now I'm adding the flour to make the roux because it has to thicken. And once it's incorporated, the garlic goes in, and now I let this fry for a little bit to get the flour do its thing, so when we put the liquid in, it'll get thick, and the garlic releases the wonderful aroma. My goodness, I love garlic. Now we add the pumpkin, this is hard to say, puree. It's most likely wet enough to make a sauce, but I think in my case I have to add a little bit just to release the stuff from the bottom. So in goes the milk or cream if you rather have cream. I use milk because I never have cream. And then I'll just gently boil it, release it, and it thickens. Now we have a nice thick sauce. Can you see that? It all came off the bottom. Now adding the Parmesan, and after that I will add some salt if needed. Parmesan tends to be kind of salty, so it probably won't take much. Parmesan is in. Takes about 180 degrees to melt it. That means it has to bubble along a little bit, and then it's good. Ground pepper and nutmeg. Nutmeg goes so well with pumpkins, any kind of pumpkin. Here's another thing that's not in the recipe for the basic pumpkin fettuccine Alfredo. These are mushrooms, chanterelles, that were left in the refrigerator from the last meal we had with them. And I'm going to use them in there as well. It's going to go really well together. I mean, cooking is so creative. You use up what you have. Cook what needs to be gone. Incorporate it in a good recipe and it'll be all fine. I added some dried parsley to it. And over here, this is just butter and some olive oil, and I'm going to sweat some thyme and some sage. I think the sage will elevate this a little bit. So that's about done. This can be drizzled over the finished plate then. Yum. So the fettuccine are cooked. Now we'll transfer them in the pot of sauce. Then it gets tossed up. Now obviously if the ground beef and the mushrooms wouldn't be in there, it would be all smooth and just a thin sauce. But if you add things, you can add vegetables as well, zucchini or whatever, then it's a thicker sauce. But wow, this looks good. Let me plate this up. Served. Seminole pumpkin, fettuccine Alfredo, and a drizzle of infused butter with thyme and sage. So good.